providers. We don't have nearly enough to meet the need, but I absolutely understand, and I appreciate your broadening and making this available to more Kentucky kids.
I don't mean you're overrun with mental health providers. I'm saying this kind of limited who they could get the note from, so that they were all being funneled into that one area when there are more options available.
Thank you so much.
Representative Tate.
Thank you, Chairwoman Heffron. I appreciate the fact that there was a motion on the bill, but at the same time, we have a guest. So if possible, I would like for our guests to have the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Just here to support the bill on behalf of the Kentucky Hospital Association. This legislation impacts...
Can you please introduce yourself? We don't know. We have no idea who you are around here.
Travis Burton with the Kentucky Hospital Association. The reason we're supportive of this bill is it provides the ability for the behavioral health facilities in our state. In Louisville and across the state, there are a few that are attached to hospitals. There's also freestanding facilities that care for these students, and it just makes it significantly easier for them to be able to make sure their students are continuing their education without disruption.
Thank you. With a motion on the bill, Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Baker. Yes. Representative Banta.
Yes.
Representative Kleins.
Yes.
Representative Decker. Representative Dietz.
Yes.
Representative Elliott. Aye. Representative Fleming. Aye. Representative Gooch. Aye. Representative Proctor.
Yes.
Representative Rayburn. Representative Raymond.
Yes.
Representative Riley. Yes. Representative Rourks.
Yes.
Representative Tate. Yes. Representative Wilner.
Yes.
Representative Wilson. Yes. And Chair Hebron.
Yes. The bill passes with favorable The bill passes with favorable expression and should do so on the floor. 15-0. Congratulations, Representative Justice, for passing your first bill out of committee. Please give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Committee.
We are going to go a little bit out of order on the agenda. Next up, I will ask that Representative Johnson and your guests please come to the table. We will be hearing House Bill 334. Please make sure to introduce yourself and your guests for the record, and please make sure your microphones are on. You should see the green button.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is DJ Johnson, State Representative for the 13th District. I'll let my flankers here introduce themselves, if you would, please.
Good morning. My name is Doug Hoyt, Chief Executive Officer of Wendell Foster in Owensboro.
My name is Jason Squires. I'm the Chief Operations Officer of Cedar Lake, based in Louisville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Shall we begin?
Please.
So we're here today to discuss House Bill 334. House Bill 334 is a very specific and narrow bill that we're looking to do a very specific thing with, and that is to create a new section of KRS Chapter 216B to require an application to increase the number of beds by an intermediate care facility for individuals with intellectual disability to be consistent with the state health plan under certain conditions. Very briefly, right now, the opportunity to apply for additional beds does not exist under the state health plan. This bill will change that so they can apply. I do want to say that this is the effort to allow them to apply for additional beds. It does not address the circumstances or conditions or the number of beds or any of that. Those are important conversations that must be had, but they can't be had until we do this important first step.
We've got a motion from Representative Riley and a second from Representative Gooch. Are there any questions from the committee? We do have two people here to speak against the bill today from the Protection Advocacy. I would invite you all to come up to the table.
And if we could at the end, Madam Chair, I would like Mr. Hoyt to have the opportunity just to speak a little bit about the different programs with Cedar Lake and Wendell Foster. I think it's an important thing. That's good information.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Please make sure to introduce yourself for the record. Make sure your microphones are on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Jeff Edwards. I'm the director of the Kentucky Protection and Advocacy Division. We are the state's Protection and Advocacy Division that was designated by Governor Carroll in 1977 by executive order. This is Heidi Schishler, our legal director. We also have comments from Bob Napalili, if time allows, a member of the Council on Developmental Disabilities from Louisville. As the State Protection and Advocacy Division, we have been making comments since 2008 regarding this issue of public beds being transferred. And the last time the Cabinet's response was they wanted to retain the beds for small community-like settings. And there's also the Michelle P. waiver, that settlement agreement between ourselves and the Cabinet for Health and Family Services that where the waiver was created. There was a provision at that time that also prevented backfilling of those beds and also increased the services in the community, but also brought crisis services for people. Like Heidi's going to go into some more detail about the process that we've dealt with through here.
Good morning. As Jeff said, Mr. Edwards said, my name is Heidi Schissler-Lanham. I'm the legal director at Protection and Advocacy, and wanted to give you guys a little bit of background. And when it said, are you pro or con when you're signing up, I'm not sure we're pro or con, so to speak. We just want to educate you all on these beds. ICFs, IDD, or intermediate care facilities for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities have been around for years and years. They are paid for by Medicaid. In Kentucky, you have both public ICF IDDs and private ICF IIDs. The two privates are the folks who are here today, Cedar Lake Lodge and Wendell Foster. The remaining approximately 482 ICF beds are considered public beds. Persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities live there, many of them for their entire lives. Protection and Advocacy has long been trying to get people out of institutions and into the community, guided a lot by the United States Supreme Court of Olmstead versus LC that you've probably heard of, the Olmstead case. That term is used a lot. That's a 1999 case that says that according to Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, states must provide services to individuals in the most integrated setting appropriate to their needs. Oftentimes that is the community. So and in fact, Olmstead does not say that institutions shouldn't be there. It should just say that if people want to live in the community, they should be allowed to live in the community. Using those precepts in 2001, Protection and Advocacy filed a federal court lawsuit against the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, which ended up in what's called the Michelle P. settlement. Michelle Phillips was one of the named plaintiffs in that. And out of that, you get the Michelle P. waiver that some of you guys have heard of. We got crisis services, as Jeff talked about, and there was also a provision in there that said that there could be no backfilling of any of the public beds. The idea was that you would decrease the use of public ICFs down to a certain level and that they wouldn't backfill those beds. There's also something called the State Health Plan, which is what we're kind of dealing with here today. And since 2008, we've been providing comments on the State Health Plan, specifically about ICF beds, saying that you shouldn't be able to transfer the public beds to the private ICFs because of the Michelle P. settlement, which said you couldn't. That is no longer in effect. It hasn't been in effect for since 2011, but the spirit of it is still there. If there's going to be any transfer of public, we still think there shouldn't be transfer of public beds, but the most recent time that we filed our comments to the state health plan, which is a 2-year state health plan, every 2 years they accept public comments on it, and then they update it every year, and we always file that we call them the perennial comments. The most recent statements from the Cabinet Health and Family Services, the Office of the Inspector General is who deals with the state health plan, is that they want to be able to allow for public beds to be transferred to privates, but only in small community-based. Much of this bill speaks kind of about this. It talks about the ICF being owned by a non-governmental entity, which are those two that I spoke about, Wendell Foster and Cedar Lake Lodge. And it says those additional beds would be in a freestanding building on or off campus. We'd suggest that it should be off campus if this is going to move forward, and that those beds be small, 4, 8, something like that. The cost of ICFs versus SCL is incredible. The average cost for SCL, as testified to a couple of weeks ago at the House BR Subcommittee on Health and Family Services, average cost for SCL is $92,700, and the average cost of the publics, based on the latest available 2023 per diem, is $462,000. So you can get 5 SCLs for each ICF. We believe that many people can be better served in the community, and that the state should be putting money into increasing what's going on with SCL. You know, there is a waiting list of SCL of over 3,000 people, a waiting list on Michelle P. of over 8,000 people. We think that the money needs to go there. I also have, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I know I've kind of gone on and on, but I do have a letter from Bob Napalili, who is the parent of not child anymore. Their son Robbie is almost 40. He has diagnoses of IDD, cerebral palsy, and seizure disorder, but is capable of living in the community. He currently resides in a non-governmental ICF IDD and has been there for 15 years. He goes on with many of the same arguments or points that I put about the cost of the two, and suggests that it would be better for the state to put its money into community-based placements. As I said, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions? Representative Gooch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think my question was partly answered, and the question was going to be, the waiting list on Michelle P. I've known for years that it was a lot, and then you just confirmed that it's over 8,000. And when you have programs out there, and we know that we need more money in those programs, but when you have that type of a waiting list, probably you're never going to get the full need out there. And I just wanted to reference that because I was aware that, and Michelle P. was mentioned twice about the extensive waiting list in that area. So,
well, and I'd add that SCL provides all the services that you get in an ICF, and Michelle P. provides all those services minus the residential piece. So many individuals, a lot of them living with parents, don't need the residential piece, but when their parents go away, they need the residential piece, so SCL is important for those folks. And I believe these gentlemen here are going to testify that there are waiting lists to get into their ICFs. So there are waiting lists for services for folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities throughout the state.
Representative Rourke.
Thank you. My question is, I think we're trying to balance two things. One thing, of course, is that if people can live in community, that's always the better option. And I think that we know that here. But I think the challenge comes when the needs are so intense that you need to be placed in one of these facilities. And I think ultimately anyone, with a loved one wants them to live in having the most options for community. But ultimately, sometimes this becomes the placement and the decision that they need to make for their family member or their loved one. So I guess, can you address how, making an increase for an application, increasing with an application process, just to open up that conversation for what that could look like, how potentially that could do harm to the system in terms of, keeping folks in the least restrictive means necessary.
I'm not sure I don't know, do you have?
I
I'm
can
not
read.
sure there's harm, so to speak, but it's where you're putting the money. I understand that there are individuals that have more complex needs that are harder to serve in the community, and I think the Exceptional Supports Task Force that met during the interim, I don't know if any of the members here were on that task force, I want to say in the 2021 interim, talked about adding additional services to the SCL waiver, including behavior supports and nursing, because those are the folks that most often end up at an ICF, are the ones that need more intense behavior supports and more nursing supports. You get some of those things. You get some behavior supports in both Michelle P. and SCL, but no nursing. So if you have complex medical needs on top of your intellectual and developmental disabilities, then oftentimes the only place that you're going to be able to find services is in an ICF.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, and can I just make one comment? So essentially, I guess it's just for me, there's a little bit of a push and pull here in terms of there's two levels of need. Of course, I want SCL waivers to be fully funded. I want personal care assistants to be paid what they're worth, and of course have the amount of hours in the day that they need to actually care for the client. And I think in some ways it's like a yes and, because we know that we have backlogs in both of these categories. And so I guess my comment is that I think it's a little bit of what comes first, chicken or the egg, or do these things need to happen simultaneously for me? So that was my comment.
Yeah, and that's the reason why when I was trying to figure out whether we're pro or con, I'm not sure we're pro or con, so to speak. We just want to make sure that if it's going to happen, it's done small, and we want them not on the campuses. We would think not on the campus of the ICF, but out into the community, so it looks like a house, just like these houses that are here, where it could be, across the street from in your neighborhood.
Yeah, more traditional for people. People blend in with their community and are parts of their community.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, I would ask for the first group to please come back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will allow both of the subject matter experts to make comment. I would just simply say, through my observation as a layperson in Owensboro, watching Wendell Foster care for their clients, one, the facilities they have are incredible, and two, the work that they do with their clients to bring them into the community. I don't know what the definition of community is geographically, but I know what the definition of community is socially. And they work extremely hard to make sure that their clients are part of our community, and everybody in our community recognizes them when they see them. So I don't think we need to get wrapped up too much about geographic location, on campus, off campus, but I do know they are part of our community, and they're part of our community because of the work of Wendell Foster Center. So I would open with that for a final wrap-up, and then Doug, you want to go first?
Thank you. Chairman Heverin, members of the committee, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today and advocate for those people that we serve and support. As Representative Johnson said, my name is Doug Hoyt, and I have the distinct privilege of serving as the CEO of Wendell Foster, and it is a privilege to me to be able to do that. Each and every day, I have the opportunity to interact with the folks that we do support, as well as the employees who provide that support. All of those folks we refer to as difference makers because, in fact, going both ways, they truly make a difference in the lives of everybody. Those we serve make a difference in my life each and every day. Wendell Foster is a multi-service provider of disability support. We offer through all of the services more than 75,000 services annually. We do provide SCL support as well as ICF and a number of other programs. I'm here today because I and Wendell Foster have the obligation to advocate for those that we support and those that we have the opportunities to support. One of the ways we do that is, in fact, through our ICF, our intermediate care facility. It's a residential option that does allow people with intellectual and developmental disabilities the opportunity to live in the least restrictive environment possible while providing the support that they need for their complex medical needs. Today, 63 people call our ICF home, which is located in the heart of Owensboro community. There's another 56 people on our waiting list that have been qualified to live in the ICF. In addition to that, we have 11 more people who are in the process of being qualified, and I expect in the next 30 to 60 days that, in fact, they will, bringing our total to nearly 70 that will be on our waiting list. Cedar Lake also has a waiting list, and I'm sure Jason will talk about that. Wendell Foster and Cedar Lake want to add a small number of additional beds in order to be able to support additional people. Today, the state health plan serves as a roadblock, preventing that from us from accomplishing our goal. House Bill 334 will alleviate that roadblock and allow us the opportunities to submit the application for expansion of these services. We would do that in a way that is the most economically feasible that we can, and we certainly appreciate your consideration of this bill and the support for people with disabilities. Thank you.
Jason, please. Do you have anything to add?
Thank you again to the committee for having us here today. Just a couple quick comments to follow up. At Cedar Lake, we of course provide services to individuals on the SCL and Michelle P. waivers as well. In fact, we serve more than twice the number that we serve in the ICF. So we have a foot in both camps and believe fully in community integration. One of the things that makes this a more complex issue is we do have a waiting list, but in addition to the waiting list, the folks that we support in the community have priority over the waiting list. So anytime we have a vacancy at the ICF and we have an individual in the community whose needs exceed Michelle P. or SCL funding, that person trumps the waiting list. And so over the past 20 admissions to the ICF, 12 of those have come from within Cedar Lake and only 8 off the waiting list. So that's another compounding factor there. In terms of the ICF services that we offer, we have a 63-bed located in Oldham County, and we have 2 8-beds located in Henry County. And then our newest, you see on the slide here, what we call Sycamore Run, is a 4-bed ICF. We have 2 of those that are situated in a neighborhood on the outskirts of LaGrange. And these 2 homes are in a typical neighborhood, just like yours, just like mine. They have neighbors. They have trick-or-treaters that come by the house. And so these are individuals that without this funding wouldn't be living in a regular neighborhood. Now, we believe that there's a place for a larger facility like the Lodge with 63 beds, and Wendell Foster also happens to have 63 beds. We believe there's a place for that. But for individuals with intensive medical needs, intensive behavioral needs to live in the community, this is the only option. And so we're asking for your support with that. Thank you all again for letting us be here today.
Thank you very much. Finally, in summary, I have to say that I have never spoken so much after hearing the words motion on a bill before. So I appreciate your indulgence and patience as we explained, I think, a very important program. So we simply want to increase the ability of these 2 fine organizations to provide more service and the higher quality service that they do. And this is the first step in that application process. I would appreciate your yes votes. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? If not, Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Baker?
Yes.
Representative Banta?
Yes.
Representative Kleins?
Yes.
Representative Decker? Representative Dietz?
Yes.
Representative Elliott? Representative Fleming? Representative Gooch?
Can I explain my vote? Madam Chair. Okay, thank you. As someone who's represented a portion of Davis County for almost 3 decades, I've had several opportunities to, to tour Wendell Foster and to see the great work that they do there. And I'm happy to vote yes because of the fine work that I've witnessed in those 3 decades. Thank you.
Representative Proctor,
Yes.
Representative Rayburn, Representative Raymond,
Yes.
Representative Riley,
Yes.
Representative Rourks,
Yes.
Representative Tate, Representative Wilner.
I'd like to explain my vote, please. I'm going to pass for today. I do support this. This presentation, it's like so many others where we are reminded of how much we are leaving the fundamental needs of Kentuckians unmet. And were this to come to the House floor, I would like the opportunity. I don't want to endanger it being put on a consent agenda where we are not able to have the conversation about how important this is. So I do support it, but I'm going to pass for today so we can discuss it. Thank you.
Representative Wilson. Yes. Chair Hebron.
Yes. The bill passes with favorable expression, 14 yes votes and 1 pass vote. Congratulations. It should pass with favorable expression on the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee.
Before I go down to the table to present, do I have any representative who needs to record a vote on House Bill 238?
Madam Chair, would you record for me for a yay vote for 238, please?
Yes. Representative Fleming? Okay.
The next bill we hear is House Bill 248. Representative Hebron, if you could identify yourself and your guests.
Hello. I am Samara Heffron. I'm the 18th District Kentucky State Representative, and I'll let my guests introduce themselves.
My name is Jeff Gregory. I'm mayor of Elizabethtown, Kentucky.
Jeremy Thompson. I'm the police chief in Elizabethtown.
My name is Gene Deathridge Jr. I am the president of the Kentucky Recovery Housing Network Advisory Board.
Thank you. Representative Hebron, go ahead and proceed.
Thank you. Can I get, I would like to make a motion for the committee substitute PHS 3.
All right. We have a motion and a second for PHS3. If we could, let's go ahead and have a voice vote. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, proceed, Representative Hebron.
Thank you. Members of the committee, thank you all so much. This has truly been a true work of compromise. I appreciate Representative Tate's conversations and the work that we've done as a coalition to get this bill through and to this point in committee. The House Committee substitute to House Bill 248 represents an agreement among treatment providers and their communities by establishing a certification requirement for recovery residences, sober living homes, and any similar type of drug-free residence for unrelated individuals. That's the basis of the committee sub. I would like to make sure that my guests have time to speak and really to talk about the reason why this bill came up in the first place. After we do that, I do want to talk about a floor amendment that has been added with the work of Representative Tate. I know that we generally don't do floor amendments this session, but this was a true work of compromise on this. So I will let my guests go ahead and talk about why we got to this point.
Thank you, Representative Hebron. Once again, my name is Jeff Gregory. I'm the mayor of Elizabethtown, and I want to preface anything that myself or Chief Thompson says here in just a few minutes with the fact that we are not anti-recovery. Matter of fact, we're both retired Kentucky State Troopers. We both have people in our families that have gone through problems with addiction, so we know what it's like to see people struggle with addiction. What I will tell you is in the city of Elizabethtown, especially post-COVID, we've seen a rapid growth of recovery houses and sober living houses pop up all over our city, to the tune of 87 different houses as of today that we're seeing in the city of Elizabethtown. And it's caused us some stress and some strain, tremendous unsustainable financial strain on a lot of our indigent support services, like Warm Blessings, which is a great organization that feeds anybody that's hungry in the city of Elizabethtown, along with Feeding America, where they get their food. Chief Thompson will talk to you a little bit about another one that we have. But some numbers from Warm Blessings, $75,000 they've spent in the last 5 months feeding people that they have recorded that have come out of these recovery houses or sober living houses that are sending their people to our support services to be fed every day. And so what we're seeing is, and once again, I want to reiterate, it's not all of them. We have some really good recovery centers, and we have some really good sober living houses in the city of Elizabethtown, but we also have several that we think are bad actors that we need a regulation arm or some kind of enforcement tool to be able to address. And those bad actors are the ones that we are talking about that are really putting the undue stress on our services, to include our police services as well. So I will let Chief Thompson speak to that for just a little bit, and then I'll be able to answer any questions that you have, hopefully.
Good morning. Thank you again for the opportunity to allow us to come today and just to hear some of the problems that we're having with, again, as the mayor said, with our bad actors. One of the reasons that we approached Representative Heverin about this was because we were getting doors literally slammed in our faces by some of these facilities that won't allow cooperation when we have wanted people that we know are inside some of these facilities, when we have considerable call volumes coming from these facilities, from many of these facilities. I don't want to cast that wide net to say all of these facilities, but there are a couple that are monopolizing our time and our services. And that's not just from law enforcement, that's from our EMS staff, and that's also from our fire department who back up EMS on some of these runs. We have numbers here. I'm not sure if you've been provided those numbers or not, but I can show you some of those numbers. I certainly want to be respectful of everyone's time. But I started looking at post-COVID numbers in 2021. These numbers began to increase again. And what we were seeing is a lot of the folks that we were having come to the Elizabethtown area aren't from Elizabethtown. Many aren't even from Kentucky. We were finding this out because the services the mayor spoke of at Warm Blessings and Central Kentucky Feed the Homeless are two food pantries that service anyone, again, in need. They will not turn away anyone, and we applaud that. We actually work hand in hand with both these organizations. Feeding America, we took 17 people from the police department yesterday down there to help prepare boxes for the needy in our community and surrounding counties. So we are very active in trying to be a part of the solution. That being said, what we're finding is many of these people find themselves out on the street when they're kicked out of these facilities. They're kicked out for a variety of reasons. But once they are out of these facilities, if they're not from Elizabethtown, they have no resources there. So what we're seeing is one of these particular food pantries is helping get bus tickets. And in January alone, she purchased 28 bus tickets just this January. That cost about $80 per ticket. Close to $2,200 in 1 month. This is an increase from where they are. Many of these people that have been kicked out, these clients that are battling addiction, are put out on the streets, and they're from Memphis, they're from Knoxville, Nashville, they're from all over southern Tennessee. And when we're asking them how they're getting here, they're being recruited by some of these bad actors to come up here, and then they're there 30 days, they're kicked out. We've had fatal overdoses in Elizabethtown in 2022. We had 15 fatal overdoses. 1/3 of those were either from addiction services providers. 2 of them were inside one of these facilities. One was a peer support employee who was there to help those battling addiction and had a fatal overdose. Now I ask you, if that's the case, are we doing these clients that are there at their most vulnerable point, needing help from addiction, and we're putting them inside of facilities where there's potential for overdose? I would have a hard time explaining to a family member that that's true care. Again, there are great services by some of these providers out there. I would question anyone that would be scared of some type of not necessarily enforcement, but some type of just oversight. If you're doing the right things and you are victim or client oriented and you're trying to provide these services, I don't understand why you would be, and I'm not looking for the police department to have an additional responsibility. I promise you, we have plenty to do. So these problems that I speak of aren't something where you put that police Band-Aid on it and just say, well, the police can do this. This is something for someone else to come in, but a regulatory arm to be able to enforce this, to make sure that these people that are most vulnerable, that are reaching out for help, they're there to be provided addiction services, get those services. And then if not, to be treated like human beings instead of kicked out on the street, not allowed to get their belongings, which then in turn causes problems. That those people that have been kicked out of these facilities, they want their stuff back. They want to go home. And many of these facilities will not allow them for up to 72 hours, if at all, to get their belongings back. So that's when the police get called. We get called there for disorderly subjects. And, again, we will always respond to calls for service. This is not to avoid us doing work. This is to make sure that those bad actors are held accountable when they are not providing services that they're supposed to be providing to these vulnerable individuals that need help. It takes a lot. I've lived with someone battling addiction. I still have family members battling addiction to this day. When they finally break down and they want help, and it's a long process oftentimes, it takes a lot to get to that point to say, I need help. When they get there, we've got to make sure that these places are providing that help for them. So again, I want to be respectful of your time and our other guests. I'll pass the microphone.
Honorable members of the House Standing Committee on Families and Children, my name is Gene Deathridge, and again, I presently serve as the president of the Kentucky Recovery Housing Network's Advisory Board. My role on the board is one of leadership, but most importantly, it is one of representing thousands of Kentuckians living productive, civil, and happy lives as individuals in long-term recovery from substance use disorders. As an individual living in long-term recovery, I have been able to do much in my 8.5 years in recovery to improve my own life and the lives of those I share our great Commonwealth with. I'm a father to 2 boys, Caleb 10 and William 7. I'm a good husband to my wife, Kiera, who also happens to be the daughter of a Kentucky State Trooper. I'm an active member of my community and a loyal and fierce advocate to those who are seeking the same miraculous transformation my own life has seen through recovery. Of great importance to share with you today is that my recovery would not have been possible without access to safe, quality recovery housing. When I returned to Morehead State University to finish my education after finding recovery, I pursued and obtained my master's degree in public administration. I served one of our community mental health centers as the housing specialist at the Genesis Recovery Kentucky Center. I helped Oxford House get started in Morehead, Kentucky. I worked for one of our Commonwealth's former governors to promote and expand quality recovery housing not only in Kentucky but nationally. Forgive me, I'm nervous as a dog with peach seed. But I was chosen to represent individuals in long-term recovery on the advisory board for Recovery Ready Communities, stemming from my involvement in the project going all the way back to its being only an idea as I participated in Leadership Kentucky's Bright program for young professionals in Appalachia with Representative Adam Bowling. Recovery has not only given my life meaning, it has given me purpose. This list of accomplishments I have just shared with you is not meant to impress you with me as an individual. I only wish to provide you with a flesh and blood illustration of what quality recovery housing can do for a life that was otherwise lost, hopeless, and a detriment to society. Speaking with you today on behalf of the thousands of Kentuckians yet to enjoy the opportunity I have been given is one of the greatest honors of my life. I want to thank the other members of my advisory board who have helped me prepare to share with you today, Mr. Dallas Hurley of the Volunteers of America, Emily Cato of Pinnacle Treatment Systems, and Tara Mosley Hyde, CEO of People Advocating Recovery, among many others. I want to especially thank Mr. J.D. Cheney of the Kentucky League of Cities and Representative Samara Hebron for trusting in our experience, our spirit, and our heartfelt love for those who we seek to serve and protect. Their confidence in my sincerity and expertise on this subject is a great honor as well. To begin explaining our complete and full-throated support for this legislation, I would like to provide you with some information that speaks to why the intent and structure of this bill is well written. The Kentucky Recovery Housing Network, which was initiated in 2020, has already certified 47 homes across the Commonwealth, representing 545 beds of recovery housing. Additionally, we stand in support and alliance with the Oxford House model, which represents 107 recovery residences across the state for a total of 813 beds of recovery housing. Finally, we remain in support of the Recovery Kentucky programs, which comprise an additional 1,800 recovery housing beds in Kentucky. All told, this makes 3,158 opportunities for individuals to enjoy lives of long-term recovery. I got one of my pages wrong. Sorry. Many of you already have certified recovery housing in your communities, and I've lost my numbers here, so I'll just go on. The whole reason we got involved with this is because we were introduced to Mr. Cheney and his desire to address bad actors and those who may be ignorant of best practices in recovery housing, which produce a bad reputation for all recovery housing operators across the Commonwealth. Of the 47 homes and all the beds that I've mentioned, these have all been entities and operators who have done so voluntarily. There's been no compulsion, so there is a desire within the industry for them to separate themselves from bad actors. Many do not understand the process of certification or what is involved, and as I seek to conclude my remarks, I wish to provide you with an overview of what this legislation would accomplish. The National Association of Recovery Residents is one of two nationally recognized standards for implementing best practices in recovery housing, along with Oxford House. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration requires that some standard be implemented to utilize their funding to expand recovery housing, which has so far been the Kentucky Recovery Housing Network standard. It is the same as the NAR standard. The NAR standard itself is comprised of 4 domains, 10 principles, and 31 standards, as well as recognizing multiple levels of recovery housing which support long-term engagement in safe and supportive environments. First, there is a requirement that all necessary documentation and formal protections exist to serve the residents. Second is a site visit to ensure that the physical structures are suitable for habitation and provide a home-like setting. And third is the resident and staff interview process. Combined, these parts ensure 3 critical things about any recovery residence. 1, that the legal and ethical protections needed to ensure resident success are in order. 2, that an operator is not subjecting individuals to substandard living conditions, and 3, that both staff and residents are focused on empowering and promoting a lifestyle of recovery which help the individual successfully reintegrate into society, find and retain gainful employment, be free from abuse or harm, and most importantly, ensure that the individual is being taught to take personal responsibility for living and maintaining a lifestyle of recovery.
Motion.
I'm sorry. Do I have a second on House Bill 248 as amended by PHS 3? And we got a second.
I have a question.
By
Mr.
Representative
Chairman.
Wilson. Representative Elliott, you have a question, sir?
Thank you. Could somebody explain the floor amendment? I know you had referenced that from Representative Tate, what that involves and how that changes the bill.
Yes, thank you. The floor amendment, House Floor 1, House Floor Amendment 1, will exempt a recovery residence that is owned or operated by an entity exempted from compliance with the ADA and Fair Housing Act, affiliated with a religious institution in the same county as a residence that is registered with like the Kentucky Department of Revenue or the Secretary of State's office. So basically it exempts faith-based entities that are tied to a church in the same county as the recovery house.
Representative Wilson?
Are any of these houses that you're having problems with, are any of those faith-based? No.
So I think, so they're not, but I don't, so there are some bad actors that can be clothed as being faith-based. They can be. After having several conversations with the people on our coalition that include Kentucky League of Cities, Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, Volunteers of America, ARC, Operation Unite, CARP, People Advocating Recovery, Pinnacle, Life Learning Center, Edgewater Recovery Center, Kentucky Association of Independent Recovery Centers. There's a major concern that we don't want a bad actor to disguise themselves as a faith-based entity and make a bad name for groups that are just trying to help people. And so that's why we really focused on the narrow language of the exemption, that they must be tied to a church. And that was a major conversation with Representative Tate. She has a recovery house, or she helps with the recovery house, Sierra's house in Meade County, and they are going to be associated with a church in Meade County. And so to narrow that down, and because you don't want, with it being narrowed down to the county that the recovery house is in, you don't want an entity that could be a bad actor to partner with a church and then end up in all 120 counties. Unfortunately, there are bad actors everywhere, and we don't want them to disguise themselves and hurt other faith-based entities that are doing the right thing.
Thank you, Representative Wilson. Representative Tate?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. And Chair Heaven, I appreciate your flexibility in working with me because I was very diligent. First of all, I just want to appreciate and express appreciation to our guests. I understand as you know, I come from a family of law enforcement, so I entirely understand the situation that you all are in and the risk that you take on a daily basis. So I appreciate that wholeheartedly. The problem that we have is that, as you know, we're coming out of COVID. We have mental health issues with so many people. We have basically an epidemic. We have the issue, unfortunately, with opioid addiction, as you know, and Kentuckians have been ravished with this opioid addiction. And so unfortunately, the situation that you are seeing on the street will probably be your lives for a while. And we are working so diligently to try to prevent this addiction and then to help treat the people that are incarcerated and then help those people as they come out of incarceration and help the people that have never been incarcerated. So this is going to be a heart-wrenching subject that we are going to be faced with, unfortunately, probably for the rest of our lives. And so somehow we have to figure out as a community how to work together as the community to assist our citizens. And you understand this as well as I do because you've dedicated your life to this. So I appreciate you and appreciate Chair Heverin bringing this to our attention. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Tate. Representative Rorks?
Thank you. I'm unclear as to the logistics of the floor amendment. In terms of, in my community, there are many churches. I'm from Louisville, so we have a lot of folks too who operate facilities that often proselytize but don't advertise that they proselytize. And so I have concerns that if we're not upholding the same standard of oversight and certification, that this would impact my community negatively with folks that are doing exactly what the testimony here today has said. So could you explain why you're advocating for the floor amendment and how it works in your community?
Yeah, so as Chair Heverin said, I am on the board for a faith-based transitional home. But we are, at this point, we are not associated with a specific church. I have told Rep. Heverin that we will work toward that. But I am, I want to make sure that faith-based organizations and people can claim to be faith-based and at the same time really not be. I think it's very important for us to maintain the separation of church and state. And with that, traditionally, faith-based organizations are eliminated from bills of this type. For example, my favorite is a school. So if we have a school that's associated with a Catholic church or a Christian church, then traditionally they are exempt from language of this type. And that was my concern, is that we continue with that tradition.
I hear that. So I'm trying to process through. I think I still have great concerns as to how that would play out in my community. And for my concerns for people are, of course, the bad actors tend to operate in really dense areas and also then bring down the people who are doing things well. And so I think the reason I'm really supportive of this bill is because I think that it applies a standard to where people know that when they seek out recovery housing, that they are getting a standardized approach. And also, I think helping neighbors ensure that there has been a certification process, that they can understand what has been applied. It also, I think, helps eliminate some of this like not in my backyard type mindset, especially in my community where there is a lot of affordable housing, naturally occurring affordable housing, and neighborhoods in transition where it seems that even before COVID, recovery housing was popping up, and I don't know that it was the best in terms of supporting the individuals in the community because there was so much access to illicit activities outside of the home that they operated in, and so I have great concerns about where the affordability comes from in terms of where the homes are ultimately placed, and then trying to balance that with the real fears that my neighbors have and why they start to panic when they start to see more recovery housing in their community. I think we all know that we need more, but I think the problem that I experience that I like the committee substitute for is because I think it starts to address the nature of applying that standardized approach that neighbors can really put a lot of stock in and understand that there is consistency amongst the players involved.
If I may respond with one more comment, please. And this is the reason why we compromise with the ADA language. The ADA language is consistent, and it is something that from a federal level has been applied to the faith-based organizations.
I just wanted to offer a little bit of insight from the national perspective and NARR and KHRN as to why the prevalence of bad actors has been so intense in Kentucky in the past few years. Pretty much every state that is on our border, and including the state of Florida, where some of these issues were most prevalent, have already passed similar style regulations. And given that we have such amazing friends and partners in the treatment industry in our state, they have found fertile ground to, exercise their malfeasance here. And additionally, for us, or for me, with the Kentucky Recovery Housing Network, we were unconcerned with the floor amendment. It would not prevent anyone who wished to voluntarily do so, as all presently certified recovery homes have done in the state, from seeking the certification.
If I could get us back on track, the discussion right now is on a floor amendment, and we have a place to have that discussion, and that will be on the floor. So if we could, let's just stay on the rails of what we have with this bill and the committee substitute, and then we'll have plenty of time to talk about that on the floor. Representative Baker.
Thank you very much. This is a growing problem in my community too. The concerns have been getting larger. It seems like each month we have issues with people, concerns for safety for their children, for ladies walking, people who no longer feel safe in their own neighborhood. Do you think this is a solution to help with that, and do you see further next steps along the way to help address this?
I think this is the beginning of some accountability for these bad actors. This would give cities the ability to start maybe filtering out some of those bad actors. The fertile ground that we just spoke of, maybe we become less receptive to this, and it begins to police itself, for lack of better words. But I think ultimately, as it's been said by Representative Tate, the environment that we're in right now, the vicious cycle of mental, the chicken or the egg argument, what came first between addiction and mental health problems. And I'm not the expert in that area, but I know that it's a bigger problem than just this. I don't think this bill is intended or will fix all those problems, but collectively, this gets the conversation started, I believe, and it's a step in the right direction. I think it's a very big step in the right direction, especially for our community and those other places that I've spoken to, other chiefs across our state that said this is a growing problem for them as well. I'm the vice president of our Kentucky Chiefs Association, so we've had these conversations at our meetings at length, and I think this would be a great arm for us to all start to address the problem.
Can I have one follow-up, please? And Chief, thank you so much for your expertise and your service. Your law enforcement background, I think, helps a lot in this conversation. Do you have a concern about the medically assisted treatment being available in those recovery homes? Is that something that is policed well or covered well?
I'll let the mayor.
So when we talk about these recovery homes or sober living houses, there's not medical treatment that goes on in those houses, only peer support, because if they do get into the medical support side of things or any kind of treatment, then they're a business in that sense, and then we can start looking at the different locations and zoning that they can operate in when they're recognized as a business. But these are recovery homes, basically places for them to stay so they can go back and forth to treatment. So all that they can get there is peer support.
Could I have one clarification on that? And on page 5, lines 8 through 10, it talks about allow individuals who are receiving medication for addiction treatment to continue to receive such treatment while residing in the recovery residence as directed by a licensed prescriber. My concern is if do they have access to that medication there? Do they have to go somewhere else to get that?
Okay.
Is that something that could end up floating throughout the community?
Yeah, I misunderstood that. I believe they can be given their prescriptions, their medications there, but as far as treatment goes or medical counseling, they can't get it in that area.
Are you looking at the committee sub, Shane?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
and what page is that?
Page 5, lines 8 through 10.
Okay, and can you repeat your question? Sorry, I didn't realize you were talking about
So the medication for addiction treatment, do they have access to that medication there? Is that something that I keep on my person that I have access to 24/7 that I could perhaps dispense to other people? Or is that something that someone comes in and that they administer that to me so that it doesn't become an issue, another outlet for those drugs?
Yeah. I'm going to let Jean answer that.
Thank you so much for the question, Representative Baker. Although there are definite and real concerns with we call it diversion with medications for addiction treatment, those exist in all settings, but within the Kentucky Recovery Housing Network standard, as well as the national standard, as an individual, you're responsible to have a lockbox. If you have medication that is mood or mind altering, and this extends to a standard prescription that anyone would have, whether it's blood pressure medication or SSRIs for depression. And if you are a recovery resident who does admit residents who are utilizing MAT, you have to produce concrete documentation that shows what the potential consequences are for residents if they are found to divert their medication. And individuals are also subject to urinalysis screening and breathalyzers while living in a home that's certified. So although it is still the individual who is personally responsible for not doing anything incorrect with their medication, they are held accountable and subject to rules and regulations within the home of what is appropriate or inappropriate.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all.
Thank you, Representative Baker. We have a motion on House Bill 248 as amended by PHS 3 and a second. Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Baker. Yes. Representative Banta.
Yes.
Representative Kleins.
Explain my vote.
Yes.
I just think that all those privately operated facilities should be in compliance. Private schools in the state of Kentucky have the option to be accredited by the Kentucky Non-Public School Commission. And I think that should be pursued in the future, but my vote is yes.
Thank you.
Representative Decker. Representative Dietz.
Yes.
Representative Elliott. Representative Fleming. Representative Gooch. Representative Proctor.
Yes.
Representative Rayburn, Representative Raymond,
Yes.
Representative Riley,
Yes.
Representative Rourke,
Yes.
Representative Tate, Representative Wilner,
Yes.
Representative Wilson.
Can I explain my vote?
Yes, you may.
I've been in criminal law for 6 years. I was a public defender for 2 years and assistant Commonwealth attorney for 4 years. In the past year, we had a judge basically say no more rehabs because some of the egregious behavior that has been going on. And when you have a docket that is 90% dealing with addiction issues, and as a prosecutor, you can't even try to get people help, it's a real problem. So I happily vote yes, and thank you for bringing this bill.
Chair Heverin.
Yes.
House Bill 248 is amended by PHS 3, passes with favorable expression by the vote of 15 yes, 0 no, 0 passes. Do I have a motion to adopt the title amendment? A second? All in favor say aye. Okay, so it passes. And that's the last bill we have on the agenda. And at this time, the next scheduled meeting for House Standing Committee on Family and Children is on Thursday, March the 9th at 8 a.m. in room 71 of the Annex. And we are adjourned. Everybody, thank you.